all the bustling places in this awakening nation, none is as busy as a Cantonese kitchen just before noon. Food-crazy Guangzhou is a booming city of 10 million people and 10,000 restaurants. Wizard of the Wok, Johnson Wong, makes sure his 40 chefs stay on the cutting edge of the city's exotic cuisine. This southern metropolis is the home of China's most famous export, Cantonese food, although some of it might be a tough sell on the international market.
Anything that flies in the sky or walks on the ground, as long as its back is facing the sky, you can eat it. We attach great importance to the freshness of food. Cantonese people love to eat.
Translation, they eat practically anything. On the other side of China, appeasing hunger is not an old story. Mrs. Gao was only 15 when she came to this tiny village to marry a man she had never met. Their lives have been unending hardship, with barely enough to eat and even less water.
People living in towns or cities can have a bath. No facility, no bath here.
The Gaos live far away from the prosperous coastal regions, in China's northwest, high in the parched and barren hills of the Loess Plateau. Spectacular, forbidding, the Loess Plateau was once a vast and verdant forest. But over the centuries, demand for lumber and cropland stripped the hills of their trees. Now the fertile soil and the farmers who depend upon it for survival are at the mercy of the sun and wind. As drought and development claim precious farmland, China may be losing its ability to feed itself. At the Gao's village, the fields of corn and beans that cling to the hillsides hardly produce enough to keep them alive. Unless it rains soon, they will produce nothing.
The sun is so hot that the crops all dry up and die. But if it rains, the soil turns soft and the plants grow well. It all depends on the rain here.
Inside their traditional cave dwelling, Mrs. Gao prepares dinner. Here, deciding what to have is not a problem. Dinner is noodles, every night. 1 out of 8 Chinese still lives in absolute poverty. Just getting enough to eat is a daily struggle.
The day before yesterday, we had more than enough to eat. As for the most delicious food, it's noodles, with meat. For people like us, that's as good as it gets.
Even in what some are calling the Chinese century, many people's biggest fear is still the fear of hunger. But in the north, time may be running out for China's food supply. High on the Loess Plateau, in the intense heat of summer, Mr. Gao is moving mountains. These giant terraces are part of a government campaign to reclaim agricultural land and stop the precious soil from being washed away by the rain when it comes. His wife begins a daily ordeal, the trip down a massive gorge in search of water.
My arms ache, my body aches. Sometimes I don't think I can make it.
This tiny stream is the only source of water for the entire village. Mrs. Gao makes the 2-hour journey twice a day, every day.
I have no choice. I have to get the water. If I don't make the trip, then we have nothing to drink.
But the water is yellow with sand and sediment. Before they can drink it, they must let it sit for hours. And sometimes Mrs. Gao makes the arduous trip only to discover that the stream has temporarily gone dry. China faces another threat to its arable land, one even the Great Wall is powerless to resist. Northern China is drying up. Increased demand for water is draining even underground supplies. Land is turning to sand. Once this was cropland, then the sand came. Many fled, abandoning their homes and farms.
The
top of the sandhill was even taller than the roof of our house. Sometimes the sand totally buried the crops. If the sand was not too deep, we would dig them out. We had to plant 3-4 times every year and still didn't get any good crops. I decided to find a way to stop the sand moving. I struggled with the sand. I wanted to win.
Niu Weiqing's neighbors laughed when she started to plant trees. And more trees. 20 years later, she and her family have planted millions of trees in the desert.
I will create green land till I die. As long as I can get up and move, I will keep on planting. I will spend my whole life in the desert planting trees and beating back the sand. I hope to turn the desert into an oasis, a place with birds and flowers. The desert will disappear.
Today, nobody laughs at Mrs. Niu. Her tree campaign has made her a national hero of the government's reforestation program, a symbol for a government that believes in the power of great mass campaigns, model citizens, and people who triumph over the elements. As the local school children hail their hero with a song of devotion, somewhere in China, another field is lost to drought or to development. China may well become a 21st century superpower, but a question hovers over its future. Can the ancient, indomitable will of the Chinese people save the heaven that is food?